So, in the first session, Sean, I had to write down a lot of things that I just didn't understand. I mean, here's my cue cards, and I've written down all kinds of things on them. So, but one of the things he said that really applies to distribution was deterministic concurrency. I had no idea really what that meant, but he used the soccer analogy of the players kicking the ball to the right people at the right time, and that's what distribution is getting the right products to the right place on time, and that's what we really strive to do.
In recent years, we've really observed a growing willingness to allow distributors, where we've always participated in A4, to start participating in A3 distribution, whether that's manufacturers allowing our resellers to bypass stocking requirements, to those dealers requesting that flexibility. And so we're really happy to bring you this panel today that covers various partners in the different areas of the channel. DM is representing from a distributor or disty standpoint. Certainly not the only choice, maybe your favorite choice, I'm not sure. But we're just one of the distributors available, right? We've got manufacturer partners and dealer partners. These are just a handful of folks that we're working with to bring this model forward. And so what we thought would be really a good way to get started is we'd like each of our panelists to briefly introduce yourself and then share how your company began to embrace this change in the supply chain, whether that's A3 supplies or hardware, and also what was the key event or reason that sparked that shift?
Looks like we're starting with you, Karl.
Okay, so you guys can hear me still on my mic? Yeah, okay. So Karl Boissonneault from Xerox. So listen, Xerox has been doing business with distributors for a while now. So just to give you a bit of context, right? So what we called our channel business up to the early 2000s was essentially our agent channel, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And I like to refer to the agent channel as a variable cost direct sales force. Whereas really doing business through the channel is a different models, you know, as you guys all know as dealers. So the Europeans actually were the first ones to start with their concessionaires in Europe and leveraging a relationship with Tech Data back then to look at really moving our supply chain operations over to a distributor. At the same time in the US, we acquired Tektronix, which was doing a lot of business need for in the channel space, which really was our first venture in doing, I'm gonna say buy-sell channel business. And from there, I mean, we actually began our dealer program a few years later, and it was really never a question for us to determine whether or not we would do this directly ourselves or through others. We acknowledged that really early on that we weren't really great at it. So that we had great synergies doing this with you all. So that's one side of the relationship. And if I speak specifically for DM, being in the managed print space on our direct sales, where we fulfill various brands to our end users, we've had a relationship with you guys for many years as a client as well, fulfilling supplies for our managed print services and users. So long-standing relationship, and recently we introduced A3 as well as part of our growth as well into the dealer network with you all, which is not yet a year, almost. It feels like a year, but we're not there yet. But yeah, thank you. That's about Xerox.
All right. Hi, my name's Brian Murphy. I joined UBEO Business Services in 2019. Prior to that, I spent 35 years in the service leadership business at Icon and then Rico. When I got to UBEO, we were already doing business with Supplies Network back then, we did this PM. And what we were doing was mostly equipment, and we did have some NPS customers that they were servicing for us across the country. We quickly learned that the team that was in place, we trusted them, they executed, and they started handling supplies, which, you know, at our point in time was a pivotal point because we were moving into new warehouses, and allowed us the ability to look at, can we first save money, but can we cut down on our space? So we quickly entered into the supply business with them right after COVID, actually, like 2022. We're just expanding as much as we can today. It's a very reliable service, very reliable business, especially in today's world where we're all shifting to just-in-time toner, having it labeled correctly, knowing it's going to get there in the time frame, and not having to negotiate with UPS every quarter or fix their mistakes every quarter. A big value for us was the accessorial charges. We didn't really have a good eye of sight to those prior to joining DM, and now we're correcting those quickly as we find them. So there's a lot of benefits, and I'm sure we'll talk about more of them, but that's Brian Murphy, it's my intro. Tim.
I'm Tim Renegar with County Office Solutions. I've been in this business for a long time. And I will tell you, we have used all sorts of different distribution through the years. Previously, when you would take over fleets and that sort of thing, you would have one of your suppliers drop ship straight to them. But we weren't able to do that with our mainline products, our A3 products. And the manufacturers actually came to us and said, look, we can work this out with distribution management. And I gotta tell you, the benefits have been unbelievable. We've been able to cut inventory, conserve cash, reallocate labor, which is so tight, for the warehousing. It's just so many advantages to it. And the costs are always controlled, so you know what it's gonna be. So, and you know what? They're actually better at shipping than we were. It gets there, it gets to the right place, it gets in properly, it gets there on time. So, this has been a great benefit for our company.
Hello, Laura Blackmer at Konica Minolta. So I have a long history with distribution. At HP, I actually ran the distributors for a while and really understood their value. When I joined Konica Minolta, it's a different environment. Obviously, you're not talking thousands, you're talking hundreds. And so the idea of using a third party, the logistics basically, or distribution management at the time, supplies network, just didn't really occur to us. We felt like we had the right mechanism within our own organization to do what was needed for our dealers and their customers. And then, as with a lot of our innovations, two of our dealers came to us and said, we'd like you to consider something. And one of them sitting to my left, actually. And they came and they said, we're doing a lot of work around working capital and cash preservation. We want to knock down some warehouses, and we feel like you guys wouldn't be very good at this, and we're not very good at it, but we know somebody who is. And it was Supplies Network. And after the introduction, we started to really think about this could be not just a value for two, really innovative dealers, but what can we bring to the rest of the community? So unfortunately, we started in 2019, which was fantastic, and then we had a couple little blips on the radar. One of them was COVID, one was supply chain. But I think all through that, we kept thinking about how much this made sense, not just for us, but also for our dealers. And so we kind of kept at it, and then once the veil was lifted and things were normal, we have been using it pretty consistently and trying to get as many dealers on it as possible, because we really do believe that the value for the dealers goes way beyond the cost savings from a labor perspective or a warehouse or shipping, but it really goes to being able to give your customers a customer experience that we couldn't do, and I know many of our dealers couldn't do, which is that product shows up when it's supposed to show up with the right label at the right place, and oftentimes it not only is my product toner, but it could also be an HP toner or any of the other devices that they're using in that space, and that's a huge value. It gets product off the shelves and gets it back into the supply chain, which is where it belongs.
Hello, Scott Stahl with Novotech. So I came to Novotech in 2019, and one of the first things that I was hit with was the inventory problem we had inside the company. Our predecessor at the company was all about just buying and buying and buying, and whatever he had to do to hit a number for the manufacturer, they would just call it and he would say yes. So we needed to generate cash flow. We needed to lessen our inventory footprint, and so yes, we were one of the ones that came to Konica and said, hey, we need to do this. We were already doing it with HP and DM, but we were like, why don't we do this with our biggest manufacturer at the time? And why don't we do this with the most product that we send so we can keep our cash? we can lower our inventory values. As we've started changing facilities through the years, we've been able to lessen our footprint from a facility standpoint, cost savings there. And it's not to mention all the soft costs, the labor, all the other things. Everybody's right. If they get it right, we got it wrong. So we had so many customer complaints when we were shipping toner. We don't have customer complaints anymore because they get it when they're supposed to get it, and it has the right label on it and everything. So.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing your thoughts. I'm going to start us off with some questions. I'm going to ask Laura a question, but before I do, I want to thank Laura personally and professionally, for without her, we would not be here talking about this shift in business model. She was an early adopter, and Scott, thank you to you and Dan for participating in it, because we needed to actually to demonstrate the shift in business model, we needed people who were willing to participate in the business model. And so for Laura and for Scott, we are grateful for that. So Laura, obviously you talked a little bit about this, but can you talk, just share a little bit with the group what ultimately drove you to make the final decision to allow us to participate in the distribution of supplies?
First of all, I'm assuming my room drop of the sweatsuit is on its way, right?
It's already in your
I'll see
room.
it there.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. We took the one Mike was wearing.
A little different size. We can make it work. Okay. I would wear it too, just saying. Okay, so the why. The why was really, again, and I think we're pretty good at not expecting all, we're not if it's not invented here, we're not going to do it. We actually look to our dealers to give us the kinds of things that are going to make their businesses and lives better. So the fact that they came to us, but I think we see it now in the scope of what we talked about a little bit yesterday with Sam, which is we know that most of the dealers are feeling this pressure on profitability. You might still be doing great. I'm not saying everybody's all of a sudden in the doldrums, but there's definitely a sense of selling more is not necessarily going to improve profitability. So what do we need to be doing? And I think we saw the back office as a huge opportunity to look for ways to do things differently. Not just the way they were always done, and certainly taking offloading, look, most of us are really, really good at packing up a nice big old A3 device or production device and all the finishing, we wrap it really nicely and we get it in our truck and it's strapped on and it gets to the customer and someone opens it up and unwraps it. That is our value add as a community. That's what we're really good at. What we're not so good at is taking little boxes of stuff and getting them to the right place at the right time, because that's a very different skill set. That's the Amazon pick, pack, and ship skill set. And that is not a skill set that is necessarily inherent in this room, with the exception of the people that are all together from DM. So for us, it was that realization, and that had a big part of it. And I think, when we talk to dealers, and I try to caution on this, because the first thing they do is they go, well, I'm paying that from you, I'm not gonna pay more. And we have to really spend a lot of time, and we do it as a pair, really. We work very closely with DM to really walk through the financials. And 9 out of 10 times, I see the light go off, and people go, I get it, and wow, I can actually see more savings, and you're even telling me. So when you have that kind of a selling proposition that's gonna actually add real value to a dealer, how could you not do it? And I think that was our thinking. And I think we're going to talk more about what are the other ways we're innovating to try to make sure that that whole process gets easier and simpler, and take as many human hands, fingers, ears, and mouths out of the process, so that your customer gets the product exactly when they need it. You may not even know they need it at the time. So I'll save that one for later.
Thank you, Laura. Scott, I mentioned you were an earlier adopter as well, making the decision for Novatech to participate in this model, and you shared some of the immediate benefits to your company, but can you elaborate at all if there were any unexpected areas of savings or efficiencies that you've since discovered since shifting the way you were buying supplies?
Yeah, our biggest was the ease and the flow to the customer getting the product. But just a lot of the soft costs, they hit on it earlier on the labor and everything. But the biggest thing was just how much, once we got it automated, how much it flowed, and it was out of our hands immediately, and we didn't have to worry about it. So that was the biggest area.
Excellent, thank you.
Karl, Xerox was also an early adopter in distribution for both A3 and A4 supplies. But you're also out front allowing for select distributors to participate in A3 hardware distribution. What led your company to choose these paths so early, and how has it been an advantage for your dealers?
So again, it goes back to a bit of what I shared earlier, right? I mean, that's kind of, we decided early on that we were not going to leverage our own supply chain, that we wanted to have a shift from direct to indirect and really leverage our distributors' capacities and operational efficiencies and doing all the things that Greg mentioned in the video, right? I mean, those are all the things that go into this. Now, in regards to, so what does it mean for us if you think about it? Ultimately, contrary to most of the other OEMs, our dealers actually don't buy from us, they buy from you, right? So it changes the relationship and the partner experience and making sure that we're aligned in many areas like programs, rebates, and so it drove a bit of complexity for us at first as we shifted, but now I actually find that that's part of the value is we're able to actually act on those much quicker and swifter, and I think the partner experience has increased as a result. When I took this job 2 years ago, one of the first things I did was reinstitute a dealer council. We brought them together, put them in a room for a day, and we kind of hashed out all the things that we need to do better. And then at the end of it, we said, let's sum it up and let's pick 3 things we need to fix. And one of the first things they asked was we need to be much better and easier to do business with, which really meant increasing the breadth and scope of the value we provide for our distribution relationships, which is what led to eventually us getting to launch our A3 with you all, right? Because as we were having these conversations, and I'm looking at Rich here, because he would hear it the same as I did, is we would always get, hey, do you guys know DM? You guys heard about DM? We kept hearing that same feedback, right? So that's where we are now, and I think, listen, it's enabled us. I mean, you are now part of our ecosystem, right? When we launch a product, I mean, you're a part of the launch process. Everything is intertwined, and I think it's ultimately providing greater value to our dealers. We're looking at further expanding that and automating areas that we still need to automate and to really drive this, first-class partner experience. So.
Awesome, thank you, Karl. Tim, you've been a strong advocate for moving supplies to distribution and have been very vocal with your peers. Do you want to elaborate on any of the views you shared a little bit in the first question, if there's anything else you wanted to pinpoint on? And also, as a solid mid-sized dealer, do you see any advantages that are maybe different than what a mega dealer would experience?
So I'm not sure I heard a word of that. I have a good age, and when I'm listening to her, she sounds like she's in a bucket. So,
I'm gonna come over here.
Yeah.
Come over here.
Let me read your lip.
All right. You've been a strong advocate, and you shared some views a little bit in the first question. If there's anything else you wanted to deep dive on, that'd be awesome. And two-parter, sorry. Okay. Do you see any advantages that are maybe different for you as a solid mid-sized dealer versus what some of the mega dealers might experience?
So I don't know, I'll answer the second part first. I don't know that there are any real differences in our advantages. I mean, we all experience no inventory, cash, saving cash, labor reallocation. We experience, it really, this is a no-brainer. I don't care if you can get hooked up with manufacturers that are willing to ship their supplies that way, and they'll allow you to use distribution, and they'll give you your credit for it, like against your quotas. It's a no-brainer. It takes all the problems out of it, and if you can get your systems talking properly, so that DM can clearly watch and monitor your fleet, we don't ever touch on it. We don't have to deal with them. We don't deal with complaints. We don't deal with that customer at the last minute. That's a thing of the past now. Now, we still have a few people that want to still have a little tone, even stop by our offices and try to pick some up. That happens. That's part of the business, but we can pull around for that. But the reality of it is, this is an easy way to get this handled. It conserves cash, conserves labor. It brings efficiencies to the business, and they just do it better. As I said earlier, they just do it better. So if you're a dealer, I think that maybe not all, but and price it too. Look, I don't pay for shipping one time. You know, it ships to the end user at a price that I can't ship it to them. Whereas before, I had to have to pay for it to be shipped into my branch or my warehouse, stored in the warehouse. Somebody had to pick it, somebody had to ship it, hopefully right, and this eliminates all that. So this has been a great move for us, and every dealer that I have a chance to tell about it, I do tell them. And you just gotta make sure that the manufacturers that you're using will allow you to get your credits. But other than that, it's a no-brainer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Brian, I have a question for you. When we first started talking about A3 distribution, UBEO was very interested, and you were in the process of going through significant growth and trying to determine the best utilization of real estate in some of your facilities. So going through the process, we identified moving supplies out of the warehouse as a potential savings. And in order to validate that, we dove into our calculator that we have designed to help model out a decision like that. Can you talk about the experience from your side of going through that process with us and leading your decision?
Yeah, so I would tell anybody in the room, if you have reservations, I would definitely use the calculator. You know, we were able to dump all of our data into the calculator. Of course, you know, being who we are, we did our own math as well, and it worked out. You know, the calculator looks at all of your costs, so it's looking at, you know, what you might be paying for the supplies. It's looking, like Tim said, what's your incoming freight cost, which is eliminated completely. Obviously, the outgoing freight cost is going to be much cheaper than what we were paying. On average, we were paying $12 to $15 a shipment to ship UPS. And I don't know if anybody else has troubles with UPS, but I feel like I have to audit the bill every time, you know, and it's just frustrating. And there's also the packaging cost, you know, the tape, the filler, the boxes, all that goes away. And then you start looking at things that, to be honest, we've been on the program just a couple of years, so we're not even sure what the impact's going to be. But who in here would like to have no obsolescence? You know, that's a real thing. You know, you get your cash, you manage your cash. You know, working capital's on the top of everybody's list. When you're using this program, it goes through all of those calculations for you to help you determine, is this a good move for me? For us, it was a no-brainer. We've continued to do our own return on investment calcs as we've matured in the program. And I would tell you, it's a great tool, and really, they're experts at loading your data, so it's a simple process. They'll load your data, they'll give you the results, and then you can kind of, you know, audit it yourself and make sure it makes sense. But for us, it was a no-brainer, you know, and I would tell you, it's worthwhile for anybody to do that exercise.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Laura, in addition to A3 supplies distribution, KM has been exploring solutions to help dealers drive out costs and build more efficiencies. Can you share some of the work being done around VCare and K-Packs and the integrations of those tools with DM?
Yep. And I am definitely out of my comfort zone with this one because it gets very technical. But, and I do want to say one more thing, and I think something to think about, and I think what's exciting for me about this program is now for the first time, we're seeing true demand. So what we see from the results of distribution management, I know that every dollar that they're purchasing from us is being sold. And that's a huge, now it's a little bit from a manufacturer's standpoint, warning, you gotta take a little hit, right? Because in many cases, our dealers were holding 60 plus days of inventory. So the first time you go through it, you have to go to your boss's office a lot and explain why, and that's okay. But now, when we're shipping to distribution management, it's true demand from the dealers, and that's a very powerful thing, actually. I'm seeing some mind shift there. Anyway, that wasn't the question you asked, but we realized that just the last mile of benefit was not enough, right? So just that process of getting the product to the customer in a way that is absolutely on time at the right place and bundled and all that was good, but that there was a lot more work that could be done from the point where someone says, I need toner, all the way back, and that the tools existed. What they didn't do, one of them didn't, but most of the tools existed, but they didn't talk to each other. And so what we announced yesterday, or Sunday, and actually there was a press release yesterday, is that we've built this with the help of ACDI, who's been a wonderful partner in this, built this engine that basically extracts the data all the way through so that in many cases, I think you said it, Scott, you don't even know that the customer just needed a toner and now has one. The tool set of the vCare Pro Suite and the K-Packs absolutely do that whole trigger. And the other really cool thing about this, and I mentioned this during the press announcement, that data that gets pulled by K-Packs is independent of your ERP system. I'll let that sink in for a second. It's not owned by anyone but you. So we're doing, along with ACDI, doing a lot of work to keep that data independent and working in your system to then execute a toner to show up on a customer's desk without any intervention from you. And vCare Pro Suite, K-Packs, and of course our partnership with distribution management is what makes that happen. So we're now pulling the benefits from the last mile all the way back into the back office. So you don't need someone to hit send. It's going to happen. And that's the future. We need to get as much of this automated in an authentic, intelligent way. I think I used all the terms I was going to use. But to make it work for your customer. And again, I think Scott said it really well, which is this isn't just a financial discussion, although it's a good financial discussion. It's also about customer experience. And the fact, you know how customers are, they see toner low, they want 5 toner bottles on the shelf that they can pull from. This changes that whole dynamic, and it has a very, very big impact on their satisfaction and your financials.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Tim, I have a question for you. You want me to come over? Can you hear me okay?
I hear you pretty good.
Okay, good. Okay, so as you were going through this process, I think you had commented specifically on obsolescence, and Brian, you even mentioned it when you were speaking. Can you talk a little bit about the discovery of just how much obsolescence there was and
Well, it was ridiculous.
all that unnecessary inventory?
Yeah, we had, I don't know, maybe we just weren't managing things, we weren't managing things properly. And it was amazing the amount of obsolete toner that we had in the warehouse. And we are still trying to get rid of it. And part of it was we had been an Oki dealer, and of course we all know what happened to Oki in this business, and so we switched to Brother, and when we did, we had a lot of switching out of Oki's, and so we had a lot of Oki supplies still in the warehouse. That was one area, but I mean, there was a whole lot of other things that just, it was surprising. When you left it to our own people to order, they thought they were ordering based on the run rate, and they thought they knew what they were doing, and they didn't. And so it ends up being on the shelf, it ends up with a lot of dust on it, you end up selling for nickels on the dollar, and sometimes not even that. So it's, the obsolescence was horrific. So that's over. That's over. Because it's all going to the end user, it's straight sell-through. The only thing that comes into the office now is just a touch in case we have that church or someone that's gotta have a little toner, they're not on the system, they're not being monitored. And also the sub supplies, that's it. Now, distribution management can make a mistake again. It's just like anybody does. But it's usually a billing error or something like that. But they fix it. That's the one thing I will tell you. You get them on the phone, you talk to them, they fix it just like that. So it sounds like an advertisement for you guys, but I want to tell you, I was really impressed.
You earned your tracksuit.
You can check later. But they have done a really good job being very responsive, helping you out, helping to understand our people and what we were trying to go through to get situated and get on the systems. It's completely eliminated the obsolescence piece. So.
Yeah, we are grateful for your honest and candid feedback. We want to make sure we leave some time to allow for some questions. So we've got about 6 minutes remaining, and we thought we would use that to answer any questions that you might have from what you've heard up here, or just in general about what we are trying to do in the market to help consolidate and drive efficiency and savings. Yes, please.
It seems like a no-brainer to me, but I'm wondering, what is your market share in the imaging channel? What is the percentage of the folks you work with?
100% in everything that we do. that was a joke. It depends on the manufacturer. It depends on the product category. Within the A4 space, we are among the leaders with some of the brands that are here today, some that have recently been acquired from brands that are here today. So we play although we may not be the largest distribution company, we are among the largest in market share in the products that we specialize in distributing. And with that comes the depth and breadth and expertise of the programs and products that you would expect. Thank you. Yes.
Yes, we've, some of our products we use distribution management for, but I'm wondering, I'm looking to move one of my Japanese vendors to this model. They currently started offering it, but we have some customers that own equipment, maybe 7, 8, 9 years old. We can't get them to upgrade. Are the older supplies available in DM, and how does that go? Because it sounds like, Tim, you don't have any supplies, is what it sounds like.
Well, that would be an overstatement. We still have stuff sitting around in the warehouse. I'm still trying to get out of there,
Small amount.
but no, we don't have much of the way of supplies at all.
So the older products,
the older
address
product.
that.
As long as they're still available in the market, we would carry them from a distribution standpoint, right? So as long as the manufacturer is still supporting those and we have an arrangement with said manufacturer, we should be able to cover you, which is a nice way. We can cover what you've already got and be poised for the future.
And Richard, if you think about it, in order for us to participate in this process, we have to have the supplies that we are celebrating that you can drive efficiencies through. And so we are partnering to make sure we're carrying the right inventory and often following the advice of our manufacturing partners on what we should be carrying. Any other questions?
Tim, how much space have you recovered, or do you think you're going to ultimately recover in your warehouse? Are you going to be able to maybe cut that back, cut down on the amount you need in your warehouse, or are you going to fill it with other products?
I gained probably, the question was how much space do we gain in our warehouse when we eliminated carrying toner? I wouldn't be able to put bags, and I would say probably 20% of my actual warehouse space came back to me because we had several brands, several models. It takes a lot of space, a lot of shelving to keep all that stuff square and straight and pulled and ready to go. And then, you get a big order, huge order going out to an end user, all that stuff has to come in at one time to be set up. So now we've got the space to do that, whereas before we were all on top of each other because of the existing inventory that we had in place. So this has been a tremendous help in more ways than you can imagine.
Thank you.
I think that might be it for audience questions, and with that, we've covered a lot of topics today, and I thought it might be nice if each panelist, do I need to lower my register? Can you hear me? You could hear David, okay. We've covered a lot of important topics, and if you could give one piece of advice or one key takeaway to the audience, we'd love to leave them with that from each of you.
Be prepared to deal with your manufacturer, because clearly you're clearing out the inventory in your warehouse first, and they're saying we're the suppliers because we're clearing that out, and then you are ordering incremental stuff from DM. So be prepared for that, and make sure your systems are ready so that they can properly monitor and have as much of your base on some sort of a DCA as you can possibly get it on, so that they can properly monitor and do their job the way that they can do it.
So unless you're talking to KM, then you don't have to worry about it, because we figured it out. It is a little painful, but we figured it out. But I will say, I won't reiterate why we did it or why we think the dealers should engage. What I would reiterate is think about what you can do with that free up of working capital. Think about marketing, training, technology. Think about what we talked about here yesterday with the breakaway team. What could you use? How could you invest that savings? So it's not just a savings, because I know savings are great. We all are trying to get that bottom line up a little bit, but think a little bit more. Think a little creatively about what could you do if you could take 20% of your warehouse space and repurpose it, or 5% of your cost of distributing product to your customers and repurpose it, and think about what that might mean for your business long term.
I would say, do the work up front on the automation, because that is what makes it work. If you have the automation in place, if you set that up front, that'll be a huge savings and you won't have any hiccups when you turn the switch. The other thing, kind of to Richard's question, is give them a list of those supplies, right? Give them item numbers and say, hey, if you can give them run rates, that helps them prepare. So if you have oddball supplies that, like you said, 7, 8, 10 years old machines, that gets them prepared and they can make sure they have that product in advance of using it. And so, obviously being the first one, we had to give them a lot of forecasting up front, both to KM and to DM. But once they got going, we didn't have to do that anymore. But if you have odd supplies that you're gonna flip to them, that would be my recommendation, is to work with them on that.
Yeah, and I'll try not to repeat anything, you guys stole some of my ideas. I think another benefit is the information that we get back. It allows us to be more efficient, make sure we're not paying extra. And the fact that their warehouses, where they're strategically located, we noticed that when we're shipping out across the country, which I'm sure everybody does ITTs, we actually get quicker delivery times because they're at the end of the runway. We're not having to ship from our little location, wherever it might be, to them and then out. So it's a benefit to us when we can get the materials to our customers faster, so.
So I'll say real quickly, I think it's in this day and age, a lot of companies are asking themselves, what do we really want to be good at? And I think there's very few, so you're either going to be high on client experience, you want to be really great in operations, or you want to be an innovator. And rarely can you find a company that does all three really well. I would say that from an operational effectiveness perspective, considering manufacturers and distributors who offer products through that means is a great way for you to get there.
Thank you, Karl.
Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences and your feedback. How about a round of applause for this great